Well. Welcome back to the Doormat Mom No More podcast, where we talk about estrangement, family estrangement, and the ins and outs and all the complexities of it. Well, interesting development. Since the Beckhams had this situation with Brooklyn Beckham go down, where he announced their estrangement and shared a little bit about those details of his life with Victoria and David Beckham. I got dragged into an article put out by The Guardian about the family and about their estrangement. And from the moment I did, my Facebook group, the Doormat Mom No More Facebook group, started exploding with new requests from the UK to join. So I know I always say that this is not a national epidemic. This has global.
She got dragged in. No, they made her an offer and said, "Can we interview you?" Yes? No. Okay. As someone who's been interviewed by different places, yes? No. Nobody's dragging me. I will say that I'm incredibly frustrated, pissed off, angry, snarky, sparky, hair on fire. Fuck all these publications who are giving her a broader reach, a louder voice, because she is so incredibly damaging to the possibility of repairing relationships that otherwise might have that possibility. When we go through low contact, no contact with our parents, and if you're new here, my name is Marnie Grundman. I've been estranged from my family of origin, my relatives, starting with my mother, for over 35 years. I have also experienced an estrangement with my own adult daughter over 20 years ago that lasted less than 3 years. It was on and off, met all the markers of all the things, and we have an amazing relationship now. I'm a therapist. I work in these types of family dynamics pretty specifically, narcissistic family systems, even more specifically. And when we're talking about the beginnings of the estrangements, usually starting with low contact and that sort of distancing, that quiet, that lack of sharing of information the way that we once did, and all the things, there's, I'll just call it a sweet spot in there of the first 3 years. That first 3 years, because estranged adult offspring tap in and out, we as parents have an opportunity to grow, evolve, and repair. This kind of representation of estrangement, this kind of my way or the highway, and your kids are just ungrateful little bastards, her words, not mine. I don't know what context they were used in. Don't fucking care. Somebody can put it in the comments section. The theme is the theme. This thing where I've seen her in interviews where, well, what did you do wrong? And there's nothing. This kind of thing that gives parents permission to hide instead of heal is really damaging, because usually within those first 3 years, those parents are also not the ones like her. I mean, she's a goner. There's a lot of parents out there, though, who pass down trauma, who are grieving, who are trying to figure out where they went wrong, who feel like they were good parents because they provided more than what they were given, and all those things in there. They attach to this messaging because it kind of tells them they didn't do anything wrong, and it feels good. And if they stay in that feel good too long and don't go to therapy to get uncomfortable so they can actually feel good, then they may and are likely going to blow any opportunity of healing the relationship that they would like to heal, but they don't think that they have to because of all this, right? So I get really angry when I see that all these magazines are giving her such a wide reach, and when they're also forgetting that she has a daughter out there that is exposed to that she has hurt so deeply that this daughter doesn't want to have a relationship with her. There's such a lack of responsibility there that I'm just, it's driving me kind of crazy, actually. Like, it's pissing me off big time. I put it as like, my mother could be out there doing the same thing. I wouldn't like that. I don't know that it would matter to me this much at this stage, but 35 years ago, it would have destroyed me emotionally. So there's that.
Global tentacles, and that has shown itself to be true once again through the Beckhams.
Because child abuse and family dynamics and human beings and all of those things don't have a border to them. They don't have a cherry picking system of, oh, it's just going to happen in Florida, but not California. And it'll happen in London, but not in Newcastle. It'll happen in Paris, but not in Belgium. Another, it'll happen in Italy, but it won't happen in, I don't know, Romania. It'll happen in a rich family, but not a poor family, or maybe not this level of poor family. Like, it has no boundaries. So this thing that I always say this, duh, say something that actually has value and importance and isn't common fucking sense. She's trying to sound knowledgeable about something that everybody should likely know. I mean, people are people. Family dynamics are family dynamics. It's not bordered,
I always talk about estrangement as being not having any type of boundaries or borders, whether it be cultural, economic, religious, what have you, geographic. It hops all boundaries and borders, and that's why it's so worrisome. Because why fix a world if there are no?
Why is it worrisome? Because it has no boundaries, it's worrisome? Oh, repairing the family dynamics and figuring out what's underneath it, that's not worrisome. It's just worrisome that it's going to spread like wildfire, this trend of an epidemic. Fuck off. I'm feisty. I'm snarky sparky. My hair is on fire, and I hope you're here for it. If you're not, that's okay. I won't know. But I would like you to be. Don't get me wrong. I'm not snarky sparky at you.
Cohesive families in it, to enjoy the world. So I want to share with you your video first about a gentleman, a doctor who I found on TikTok. Like me, he hit the ground running, speaking up in a very different way than many of the therapists and the mental health professionals are speaking about estrangement. And when I heard him, discuss what he was discussing, I found like, wow, finally a breath of fresh air, someone that stands out and actually, discusses.
Wow, a licensed therapist that actually agrees with me. And no, he could not be capitalizing on estranged parents and finding his niche of who to sell to. No, that couldn't be why. And he's unique. Have you heard Joshua Coleman?
I found like, wow, finally a breath of fresh air, someone that stands out and actually, discusses the other side of all this. So I'm gonna share a video. His name is Dr. Peter Anderson. He's right up the road from me, which I was so surprised. And he's in Massachusetts. Anderson Family Therapy. He's so overwhelmed with clients. He does not take clients himself anymore.
No. He's not taking clients anymore because he's scaling his business to do workshops. He's using the Coleman method. We'll just call it that. That's why. I'm not saying he isn't busy. I'm saying he's figured it out. He's looking at the roadmap. I guarantee you, watch as he grows. Well, if he does, he wants to be another Joshua Coleman because that's how you make a zillion fucking dollars. Did you know Coleman charges $1,000 for a one-on-one? And I'm sure he has some people paying for that. I also am equally sure that the reason he does that is to push volume into these workshops where that's where you're going to be able to access him and he doesn't have to work as many hours. It's actually a really smart business practice. However, it's also very shitty the way that they scapegoat the scapegoat children yet again and don't hold parents accountable and teach them that accountability actually is a beautiful thing. It's not a bad thing. There's that. Also, let me remind you that Pete, whatever his name is, he cites and makes up fake studies. I did other videos on him. He talks about, how we shouldn't be weaponizing affection in a marriage, that if we don't give it up, we're doing something wrong. He's next level toxic, in my opinion. And of course, in the description of this video, you can access those videos and see what his background is, as I've featured it. I mean, he has more background than what I've featured. Okay, let's get into it. Well, let's see what video she's going to play. I'm on the edge of my seat. Just so you know, she is talking fast because I sped up her video a little bit because it was like putting hot coals in my eyes and ears. So I sped it up a little bit. So this video is already going to be longer than normal. And I know some of you like that, some of you don't. At the end of the day, I can't deal with a solid hour of her. And I like to keep things in context, so I don't want to chop bits and pieces of the video. So I found my workaround is to speed her up a little bit. So no, she's not on some sort of medication. And no, I did that. I did that. Okay. I find her more palatable this way, sort of.
That tells you the impact that he's having. And let me share this one video now, and then we'll bring him on and we can talk a little bit to him. So here we go.
So this is the main reason why you actually don't cut off your parents. You ready to hear for it? When you do, you cut off your story. Who are you? Your new self? What is that supposed to mean? What do you mean your new self? New self without a story? Friedrich Nietzsche actually was asked about the eternal recurrence. And I love this answer. He said, people who are the most healthy, when asked the question, would you live your life over and over again? And with all the pain, with all the hurt, would you keep doing it over and over and over again? And you realize that the people who are the least healthy, the people that were always complaining, the people that were always the most bitter, would say, no, I would change this. I would change this. I would change this. The people who are the healthiest, though, this is Nietzsche's point, actually say, I would have all the hurt. I would have all the pain. Because how would I be who I am right now if I cut out everybody from my life that I somehow had disagreements about or disagreements with? When you cut people off, you kill your story. When you kill your story, you have no ability to forgive.
I wish I could kill my story. I wish that I didn't remember the sensation of falling out of a 2-story window when I was 5. I wish I never had any memory around being emmed by my own grandparents. I wish I could kill my story. I wish I could kill the trauma that lives in my body. Wouldn't that be amazing? Wouldn't it be amazing if when we cut, as they put it, our parents off, we killed that story? Think about the time we wouldn't have to spend in therapy trying to build and rebuild ourselves. Think about all the lessons that were the lies that would be cut off from our story, where we could start fresh at ground zero. Just putting information in there that did us good instead of did us harm. And no longer walking around with, well, in my case, complex PTSD. Wow, that'd be fucking awesome. I would do my life all over again, except for some of those parts I mentioned, because I do love who I am now. I just would love to have also known who I would have been without all of that. That somehow makes me less healthy? Or does that make me discerning?
When you have no ability to forgive, this is what happens to you. You become bitter inside. You fail to see how your bitterness has pushed so many people away that any type of constructive feedback is immediately seen as traumatizing to you.
Oh my God, he just described how many of, I don't even know the percentage of the parents he just described. The ones who can't hear that they did anything wrong and can't take any ownership. They can't take any constructive criticism. Is that what I think that's what he just said. But we're the bitter ones because we can't forgive the people who don't want to be forgivable. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
You become an inward shell of who you really could have become if you actually maintain the story of how you became who you are. Because if you're ashamed for who you are in this moment,
I will never know what my life would have been like. I will never know what it would have been to pursue the dreams that I did have in childhood. I will never know who I was meant to be, but without complex PTSD, with every time that we're experiencing trauma, where we're being traumatized, where we're being harmed, we're altered every single time that happens. Our trajectory is altered every time that is done to us. And I will never know what my potential was meant to be. I have worked really hard to build this life I have in spite of that, with so many milestones taken away from me that I will never be able to experience in my lifetime because they were taken away from me because of what was done to me. I was going to call him a name, so I'm just going to be quiet now.
You think cutoff is going to somehow alleviate that pain. It's not going to. So, therapists who will not be at your funeral, who are telling you to cut off your parents, because those therapists will not be at your funeral, they don't understand that your story is an essential component, not only your mental health, but also about who you are as a person. So the best thing that you can possibly do is not to cut those people off, but to learn how to evaluate or to supersede the previous story so you can have a better one. And that takes courage. And that takes insight. That's the road to happiness. It's also the road to freedom, because then nobody intimidates you. So what's your path?
The road to freedom is cutting off people who try to keep you from being free. How about that? And yeah, I called him a name. I lost it. I'm standing by it. If you read lips, you can have it. If you don't, I'm not repeating it. No. What makes me so incredibly sad about this is there will be people that fall into his therapy practice, whether they get to him individually because he's just so busy and special, or one of the people that is underneath him because he's only, I think, going to keep therapists around that meet that narrative. He is scaling and building his business bigger after all, is that there's no trauma-informed care there, very obviously. And it's going to keep people in relationships that harm them. And it's going to keep people in relationships that harm them where they have their own children. And guess what happens next? The carrying down, the passing down of the generational trauma instead of breaking cycles.
So what's your path? The cowardly one cuts everybody off. Now you don't have a story, so everybody can praise you for 5 seconds. Or the courageous path? What do you want to do? You choose. It's up to you.
How many great things are said in that video, right? Your story, we all have a story, right? And I agree that story is so valuable, not only to, understanding who you are and who you're going to become, but the trickle over effect into, future generations. That story is critical. And like he says it like it is. And that's one of the reasons I really, really found him to be so refreshing. So I'm going to bring him on and we're going to talk about his story. Hi.
Hello. Good to see you. Hey. Yeah.
How are you?
I'm okay. Yes, doing really well. Really well. I should preface, I'm not a doctor yet. I do have 3 master's degrees, but I don't. Okay.
Well, thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually, that's a different road. I was headed that way, but then I do teach 8 classes at Endicott. So I'm like, why get a doctorate? I'm already teaching 8 classes anyway. So anyway.
Yeah. You know what? It's probably smarter not to go to medical school.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Well, yeah. Right. So I know that was really, I was looking at doctoral work to teach. And then now that I got my own private practice and the company's growing, I'm like, and I'm already teaching. I'm like, well, I don't have to. So anyway, yeah. So it makes more sense just to do what I keep doing.
I think, yeah, you know what? I really think that we get caught up. I'm glad you brought that up, even so, because I really think we get caught up today in all of the titles and all of the letters after someone's name anyway, which doesn't mean that they're not valuable, but I think they get mistaken as absolute fact, absolute, godlike, all right, information. And and I think that overwhelms people into forgetting that common sense really does reign. And sometimes when you're in a room of many with letters and you're sitting there by yourself and you're like, okay, and you don't have those letters behind you, that doesn't mean that you don't have value to add. And sometimes, and many times, I believe that common sense perspective is exactly what's needed in a room full of very highly learned folks,
Mm,
right? So I
yeah.
think that we bring that to the table too. So don't get overwhelmed with letters and out there.
So, 100%.
So tell us a little bit about your background and tell us how you arrived to this side of the conversation, the estrangement conversation. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll try to do the long, but I'll keep it short. I'll try to do it like I'm doing one of my hospital evaluations where the doctor does want me to not go too long, but just enough information. So, I mean, I was, so I did grow up in an abusive home. My father now acknowledges that he's got dementia now, but he's doing really well, and I reconciled with my father. Much later, when I was around 21, I found faith, and that's what helped me reconcile with my father. And even though my dad at the time was not an easy man, I felt the need to forgive him. My mother was my safe person; she was my secure attached bond. I guess you could say that. But I found so much joy in forgiving him and loving him and learning about his own past. I could easily cut him out, and I probably would have had some justification, and in doing so. But I probably would have carried some of his own demons with my own family, if I'm being honest with you. And forgiving him and reconciling and really moving on from that experience taught me a lot. So that was my own personal story, but I didn't really deal with all this stuff that we're dealing with now till much later. As a clinician, I got into so I first went to school and I got my
Okay, good for him. Good for him that he was able, has been able to have relationships with his own parents. That's amazing. That doesn't translate into we all must do what he does, except for him, it does. And so this tells a little bit of the story because this is something that I see out there, right? Where I see an formerly estranged adult offspring, like her and her, they judge everybody else for not being as good as them. And that's just not acceptable. I think that if you can come together and heal that relationship and that feels good for you, of course, that's amazing. You don't get to take that forward though and judge other people for not doing things the way that you did them. And as he's not a doctor, as a therapist, he's a licensed therapist. I know that at a minimum, his doing that is damaging. It is victim blaming and shaming, and it's minimizing, and it does harm. That's your personal experience. Bringing that to pressure other people to have that same experience from this very tunnel vision sort of place, it's just not okay. As an estranged adult daughter, I don't encourage people to estrange. I also don't discourage them to estrange. As a formerly estranged parent myself, I think I have a unique perspective to help people avoid that, right? And I use all of those tools. And if a relationship can be healthy or healthy enough for the person who is involved in that relationship, like my client, for example, and it feels good to them, that's exactly what they should do. It is definitely better if you can walk through life with a family that's supportive than not, right? I would have loved to have had that. I would have loved to have been able to have repair in my relationship with my mother. There wasn't going to ever be repair. It was either accept how she treated me and stay in my role because she didn't want me as a person who had boundaries or standards for myself. That would have been the only way to be in a relationship with her. I hope he talks more about this. I hope he talks about how often they engage, what the relationship was like through his life, and what their proximity was, and all of those things, because those things matter too. Anybody can be in a relationship where you're calling somebody once a month or seeing them at the holidays, and that's it, that's all. And going backwards, because he's talking about funerals, your therapist isn't going to be at your funeral. I hope that all of my clients outlive me. If it was a situation where I could make it, trust me, well, don't trust me, I don't care. I mean, I do care if you do. I would be at their funeral and I would grieve for them because these are relationships, and They are valuable people to me. So even if nobody else, and if I found out nobody was going to be there, oh, I'll fucking be there, come hell or high water. And I know a lot of other people, other therapists, we talk, we connect, who feel the same way. Actually, when my dad died, and no, not when my uncle died, because that, well, they were present, but they were present on social, like, were we on YouTube? Whatever it was that it was streamed on, because it was during COVID. When my dad died, there was an abundance of medical professionals. Like, it was amazing how many people from years and years before came to his funeral. So, he's just fear mongering to make you feel like you're going to die alone. Well, this news just in, buddy, we all fucking die alone. It's how do we want to live the life that we have while we're here? Do we want to live it in relationships that harm us or heal us, or maybe not even heal us, just are healthy? How about that?
Master's of Divinity. I thought I was going to be doing some type of ministry, but I realized that's not what I was called to. I then stayed on at the same seminary and got a marriage and family therapy degree, and then moved up here in Massachusetts in 2011. So I saw a lot of families inside their homes. And at that time, I was also getting a THM and something else. But anyway, so I was very enmeshed inside, or involved in tons of family work. And at that time, I would, try to bring a lot of families together. I would do a lot of family counseling. I didn't see at that time like cutoff. It wasn't very much like a popular thing. Even with the parents who were very, very problematic, and I've worked with those parents. I've worked with the kids of those parents. I've seen some serious abuse. I mean, man, I've seen some real neglect, and I've walked with a lot of my clients through that, like how to maneuver some of those boundaries. But around I would say about 7 years ago, I started seeing this new phenomenon with parents that I had worked with for 10 years, who I knew these parents. They were
Every single person watching this video, if you have been estranged for more than 10 years, please drop a hand, just so that we can, show him for the fucking liar that he is.
They were good parents. Like they were, man, they put a lot of energy in their kids. Were they perfect? No, but they were great parents.
Was he there? And what is your standard of great parents? They provided. They made sure you were fed and you went to school and you got to go to activities and all the things. What about emotional needs? Let's see if he defines, we know he's not going to, what a great parent is.
Great parents. And it wasn't just one or two families, it was multiple, where they would come back to me in grief and saying, what did I do wrong? And I would hear their story and I'm like, gosh, I'm not sure why your son cut you off. I'm not sure why your daughter cut you off. And at the time, if you would talk to me about 6 years ago, I would have probably said, well, maybe there's some undiagnosed trauma. Maybe there's some kind of memory that really is holding them back. And then it wasn't until about 2 years ago, I got certified in personality disorders. And I met with some of these same families and I saw a lot of the same patterns: narcissism, borderline, histrionic, paranoid. I would play this drama triangle with these, quote, good parents. And these good parents would come in my office seeking an answer, like really wanting to apologize for something.
Yeah.
And it wasn't working. It wouldn't matter how much apologies they would give these kids would constantly up the ante to one more thing and then one more thing. And it was I started realizing, okay, this sounds very manipulative. And when, of course, I got these certifications in personality disorders, I realized, yep, that's what borderlines do. That's what narcissists do. Right. But I felt very kind of alone in this field, because what I realized,
he might as well just say children are born as the manipulators and they're the problems. This is so blatant. Like, I'm actually like, my mouth is dropping. He also talks about how personality disorders are things that we're born with and that it isn't caused by abuse. Narcissistic personality disorder has been very well documented, in particular, as being something that's developed. It's not something you're born with, in particular. But he finds studies and he works them and he does a thing. And again, watch the other video that I did of him where you can see how he very blatantly is misleading on fucking purpose. Because again, he is looking to cash in. And I think he's missing a piece. I can't say if he's got a personality disorder or not. I can say there's definitely something about him where he's blaming the victims, where he's not giving recognition to the fact that we don't raise ourselves. I mean, borderline personality disorder is born from trauma. Like, fuck off.
Alone in this field, because what I realize is tons of clinicians, I'm in the Boston area, one of the most educated places in the world, really.
Right.
I got trainings at, Harvard. I got trainings through Tufts, and I've worked at the psychiatric hospitals for the past 12 years. I've got pages of trainings, but I never got trained. None of us did, and I could speak for all my clinicians too, in how to deal with PDs.
Right.
We were all taught basically substance abuse and trauma narrative, but none of us were taught how to deal with that dynamic. And then I just kind of spoke up in a TikTok video and realized, wow, to the good parents out there, you did the best you can. And that's how I just started tapping into this. That's my brief story.
Okay, because he didn't get trainings in personality disorders, and I guess he's saying he sought that out. Really what he did was he cherry picked to find what was going to fit into his business model and that sort of thing, right? I don't know. I know a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists who are trained in personality disorders. I also know some who aren't. If it's something that, if you're working in family dynamics, you have the opportunity and option to choose to do that. Right? And I don't know what goes on in psych programs now. I do think that there's probably a little bit more emphasis because I do have some clients who are becoming psychologists in personality disorders. I just feel like he's really misleading, right? I feel like he's really missing the mark. And, again, children aren't born with personality disorders. However, he's moving in the direction of that so that these parents can feel no matter what you did, you were a good parent and you had no impact on who your children became, especially if they have personality disorders. It's a fucking lie. It's a bald-faced lie. It's an absolute lie. And I'm looking, I'm going to have this screenshot here. I just looked at it here, so you'll see it here. The smugness on his face. I might slow down the video so that you can see he's not that fast of a talker. In fact, let me do that now.
That I saw, and I was like, wow, he's speaking to people that need to hear this, especially, as you had mentioned, these parents, and we're not talking, put it right out there again, we're not talking about children that, or young adults or adults that were abused. Truly abused.
Yeah, that's a lot more complex. Sure.
Neglected. Yeah. We're talking about the parents that you were just mentioning, really good parents, imperfect parents, parents who made normal mistakes, parents who, went to great lengths to rectify those mistakes, whether they apologize and then apologize again, or what have you, parents that, attempt to go to, some sort of counseling with the child or whatnot, whatever it is. And these parents are sitting there, and case upon case, people upon people that approach me, they don't know what happened. They truly don't know what they have, and they never anticipated this. Right. And so now they're sitting here. They thought they had a wonderful family. They thought the future looked rosy, that everyone would march forward together and they would be the grandparents. And now they're sitting there with this deep seated pain, underscored by a lack of understanding, and that pain, you try to describe it, and you have to feel it to understand that type of pain, because that is such a when you raise a child from early stages to grown adulthood, and they reject you and they turn their back on you, it's like it's depth of pain that is devastating. Has driven, many parents to consider suicide. Many parents, I think more than people even let on. It's a problem. And I think, one of the things of the problem is the cluster B personality disorders being attributed to something that they did. And, you put it out there, you say it's not trauma derived. It's not, there's much more to it. So explain for us the difference you see in an adult child, or an adult, let's call it an adult, that is actually has been abused, that walks in your office, versus, let's say, an adult that hasn't, but is on this bullet train of, everybody's been abused. We've all been abused. When yet the parents, I don't know where you're.
Just before I let him answer this question, let's just keep in mind that this is a woman who, after her daughter estranged, decided that on the day of her own daughter's wedding, she was going to release a book about the estrangement. I haven't read it, but I mean, from what I understand from other YouTubers and things like that, really vilifying her daughter. I'm sure that that's not real abuse, right? We're only going to be talking about physical abuse. That's what I think is about to happen here, because he doesn't recognize personality disorders as being born from being traumatized from abuse. I just know. You just know. The vibe is there. The vibe is there.
Seeing that, because, explain that first, and then we'll go dive into the cluster B personality disorder.
Sure. Well, and this helps because I just met with somebody last night that was borderline to a T, and I'm like, that's just like, it's fresh on my memory. So a typical borderline, if they're coming in your office, they'll say something like this. I'm just giving you an example. My dad did these terrible things to me, and I, raped and abused and whatnot, but he's my hero and I have a relationship with him. But my mom, she's always kind of trying to control me. And so that's a good example. I'm like, wait, okay, so you're telling me that you have this relationship with the villain, but this person over here that trying to help you, you're villainizing her. I mean, that's just kind of like typical BPD. So she can be victim, or she could be persecutor, victim, and then persecutor. And it's almost like there's a plan going on. And that's why, was this person abused? Yeah, you could probably find some abuse. But what I've realized with my borderlines, my narcissists, my cluster Bs, is like every time I would go back to the past, even if there was some truth, it's highly revisionist. I never really talked to the family. And when I did talk to the family, I would get very different reports. And the second thing is, like, it was never helpful.
It's highly revisionist. So you don't believe your clients, and you don't take what they're saying to you at face value, and you're deciding that they have a personality disorder, whether or not you've diagnosed them formally or have been. I'm really wondering about that. What I see in clients that, and I'm not a diagnostician, and I will refer people out when it needs to be done. What I see in the clients that I've had over the years who I feel might have some BPD qualities to them, traits to them, is by and large, a denial of their own past trauma, meaning childhood trauma. I see that a lot. Actually not wanting to dig around in there so much. Think of Amber Heard, I'm not a victim kind of thing. And I believe she's diagnosed with cluster B, right? Is she histrionic personality disorder? Anyway, I don't remember, but like the way she presented is actually pretty typical. And what I see from them is the denial of that, and they're more focused on the present relationships that they feel very victimized by, very judged by, very abandoned by, betrayed by, and things like that. In very normal, where there's like very normal things going on, but to them, they don't feel comfortable or normal. Like they're constantly afraid to be abandoned. If somebody's gone, it's like they're never coming back. Like there's other things that I see in there. So it's really interesting. I don't know who comes to him, under what circumstances, but then when I talk to the family and I get the real facts, wow, this is worse than I thought it was. Like I can't imagine having any sort of disbelief in any of my clients and going, I need to talk to your family to verify that you aren't rewriting history. This is another form of abuse. This is disgusting. Anybody else? Is anybody else seeing it this way? feeling it. I'm sure many of you have had a therapist like this. I'm kind of speechless and I'm very brokenhearted.
Thing is, like, it was never helpful. Now, the other type of client with the first one that you had mentioned, and I'm thinking of somebody in mind right now, they're naming, they're throwing out abuse, but they don't even recognize that it's abuse. And that was like one of my videos. I was like, do you want to know how I know most of you are not even traumatized? Have not been, because you talk about it all the time. The clients that are actually have been abused, their Broca's area is shut down. In other words, I had a client once that's like, yeah, when my dad, I mean, he would put a lighter under my skin, and it was just, and then she would just keep going. I'm like, wait, what did you just say? And she was like, wait, when I was telling you about work? No, a few seconds ago about.
Somebody who's had abuse normalized for them and not really done therapy or talked about certain things will do what he just did, what he just said. Absolute fact. I've had clients go, yeah, my dad used to spank me. And then I would ask, okay, what did that look like? And it turns out that they were being beaten with a board and they thought that was a spanking. So that is true. What isn't true is having a client come in who is able to identify the things that now are no longer normal to them, the experiences that they had, as abuse. There are many people who know when they come to therapy that they were actually abused. And likely they missed other things underneath the abuse that's apparent to them as also being abused. That's generally what happens. That's like him saying, if I walked into his office and I said, my mother dropped me out of a 2-story window, no, I'm not to be believed because I'm able to talk about it, articulate it, and identify it. That's absurd. That goes back to that thing, people who are really abused don't talk about it. And back in the day, we didn't talk about it because we thought it was our fault and we knew we wouldn't be believed. And I wonder why that might fucking be.
You about work? No, a few seconds ago about lighter under skin. Oh yeah, that's just what he did. Well, hold up. Can we talk about that? So a lot of my actual abused clients often don't even realize it. And so I have to really slow them down. There's no game that's being played.
Right.
It's like they have coped so much and managed so much in their lives.
Right.
Just met with somebody earlier. I'm pretty sure that he's being, I mean, yeah, so there's verbal abuse and psychological abuse. And there's a lot of laughter to kind of deal with it. And then I have to slow it down. I'm noticing that you're laughing when you're bringing up what I would consider verbal abuse. So
Right.
there's almost like this dissociation that happens. And Bessel van der Kolk in The Body Keeps the Score. That's actually his main point. Your body is kind of keeping the score of the trauma. It's very difficult for you to kind of address it or even talk about it. That was maybe even my story.
Yeah, until you do. And until you have a name for it, until you have vocabulary around it, until you no longer are in a position where it's normalized for you. So he's leaving no space for the evolution of what happens when you start to talk about and unpack the things that you've been through. And so many of us go into therapy because we think that there's something wrong with us. And because the abuse has been normalized, some we don't see as abuse and other things we do. However, we believe that those things are our fault and we brought them on ourselves. Where is the evolution to be able to speak up and go, yeah, I was a victim of CSA, for example. There were times I wouldn't have been able to articulate that. I didn't understand that. There were things I didn't understand what they meant that I fully understand now. That's the evolution of what happens as you start to face the things and unpack them. So in a nutshell, what he's saying is, once he points out that you having the lighter to your skin is abuse, if you now go into therapy and say, hey, my dad, when I was a kid, used to take a lighter and I know that's abuse, now you're rewriting history. That's what I'm hearing in all of this. That's double talk. That's word salad. That's it. Who does that? Which personality disorders talk like that? I wonder.
My story too for a number of years, because I had some real trauma, and it wasn't until like a therapist said, well, okay, could we uncover this? And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that was trauma. So I think that's the main difference. Like over here, the cluster B it is part of their game and you could feel it. It's like you kind of know you're being played, but you don't want to.
Also, can we not say that's part of their game? You know, like, first of all, people who have, and we'll go with borderline personality disorder, they can go to therapy and do quite well, unlike NPD. So that's a starting point, of the differences. And so I don't know where he's going with this. It's like, let's not lump everybody together like they have this grand master plan of how to control the room in this really like, oh, if I say this, this, and that will happen. A lot of this is a dysregulation of their inner dialogue and emotions that it's like they're spinning out. They're not necessarily going, if I do this, you're going to give me, they're not like some personality disorders, which are real planners, and they actually, if they're sadists, they like to see, that their plan worked and they're very methodical in all of this and that. I see a lot with especially parents who lean towards having BPD kind of things, because again, I'm not a diagnostician, where they need control over their environment. And yes, they're behaving in a manipulative way. Also, they're not trying to do harm. It ends up being a byproduct. And I'm not saying this as a minimization. I'm saying this to kind of explain it. Like, they feel things so big, so deeply, so vast, so the things that they can't see you at some point, and that's what causes the emotional needs not to be met in their children. Because let's say one of their children is struggling like with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and when they're in high school, and that mama or that dad, I'm going to go mama because I have more mamas in this situation, they want to help, and they don't want their child to have heartbreak, and they become overprotective, they become helicoptery, they're like, I want to absorb that pain for you, and they look like they're going to be supportive, and all of a sudden it's like your mom is a part of your high school relationship because she's infused herself in there, because she's relating so deeply that she can't separate herself from the fact that you are separate people. And that's like part of what, and the way that people who are BPD-ish will do it that way, because again, not a diagnostician, will behave. That's what I see by and large. They're not looking to do harm. They're not trying for things to be a particular way necessarily. Some do, I'm sure. My point being, I don't want to paint this with one paintbrush because it's got more moving pieces than that. I really dislike what he's doing because I think it further stigmatizes a personality disorder that actually is treatable, and I think we need to be responsible and careful around that. I know I don't personally treat BPD. I have clients who come to me for certain things that we're working on, and they also go and do other modalities with other people, ones that have been diagnosed with BPD, because that's just not what I do. It's not my wheelhouse. It's not my thing. I can help with some of the other areas of the things in their behavior and their trauma and connecting the dots. Ultimately, they need other things that maybe I can't give them. It depends on, what the circumstances are. Because again, even though there are patterns, there are also things where we need to recognize that people are indeed individuals, right? And I'm just, he's killing me. Like, he's killing me because I don't want to stigmatize a group of people or people that are suffering with certain mental health disorders, personality disorders, and keep them from getting the help that they need because they see this. And let me tell you, somebody who actually is cluster B watches this, you think they're going to do you think they're going to feel encouraged or discouraged to go to therapy? Because this is telling them what their deepest fear actually is, which is not being understood and seen and heard. This is fucked.
Kind of know you're being played, but you don't want to because it sounds invalidating. It's it sound whereas over here you're kind of in the position often where you're like, Johnny, can you go back to what you just said? So I would say that's the main difference.
Okay. So explain with regards to the cluster B personality disorders. Explain where do they come from? Like explain, since they're not coming from trauma, they're not coming from, something that happened in the home per se. Where
Yeah.
do they, and obviously, are they aggravated by what happens in the home or whatever the environment is, or explain that.
Yeah, no, and this is really coming from McLean Hospital, the Gunderson Institute, or Greg Lester at Pesci, just so people know I'm not just making this stuff up. I mean, I even said this before. I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't care. Like, if it came from trauma, it came from trauma. If it didn't, it didn't. But what they've realized, this is what Gunderson realized, John Gunderson.
He does care, because if he can say it comes from breathing the air, he's alleviating his target clients from responsibility and making it safe for them to come to him. He wants the estranged parent money. It's fast, it's easy, it's like short programs, it's all the things, because a lot of the estranged parents, notice I'm not saying all of them, they want to say they went to therapy. They don't want to necessarily do the work. I've had people come to me who want to say they went to therapy, and I don't end up working with them for any significant period of time, because coming to therapy with me, I mean, we got to work together. I can't do it for you, and I'm not going to let you use me to say you went to therapy, because to me that doesn't feel right. That's not what I'm about. That's not what I'm here for. Fortunately, it doesn't happen very often. The times it does, and I don't fire people. I hate that terminology, by the way. I refer them out. I try to help them find a resource that maybe will click something in where they'll decide, yeah, maybe I will do the work. It's not that bad, right? And there used to be this, and I'm sure it's still around, I haven't looked at it in a long time. There was this institute, or these people who did this big thing to debunk repressed memories. And it was found out, there was a documentary around it, and I'm doing this really loosely. I saw it years and years ago, where it was found out that they had molested their own daughter, and they formed this big movement saying that we implant memories and all of this, that, and the other, all targeted at, smear campaigning their own daughter. If you want to find a study out there that meets your narrative, you're going to find it. It's not that fucking hard. What you need to look at is, what are the majorities showing, and who are doing those studies. And even the way, like, he throws in Vandal Kolk in there, but he's also not really giving full reference to how we talk about how the body keeps a score. Like, he's cherry picking, right?
John Gunderson, who is dead now, but he was the kind of the founder of Borderlines. I mean, not founder, but he was the first one to really treat him. It was biopsychosocial. It seemed like it's genetic. In other words, he would realize a lot of these borderlines who lived in very safe homes manifested the same type of behaviors as the borderlines that were not raised in safe homes. Same kind of patterns. So he realized that the environment kind of matters, but it's not ultimately what matters. It's part of the human brain. So the first thing you have to understand about a disorder is very different from like what you would call like major depressive diagnosis. A diagnosis is something that you quote catch. Like, if I have adjustment diagnosis or adjustment disorder, it's built on the premise that things have been pretty good in my life, and then all of a sudden tragedy hits. Or major depressive disorder, things are pretty good, and all of a sudden I just have these suicidal ideations and I want to end my life based on certain precipitating factors. A personality disorder, you would talk to these parents and it was very different. It was like, Johnny has always been that way since he was out. Betsy has always been that way. Even when she was 3 or 4, I remember her kind of pitting things against her sister. Whereas like normal.
So we're just going to talk about the scapegoat child being identified as there's something wrong with them, and we're going to perpetuate that story into their therapy experience. And we're just going to go, yeah, everything was great in the house because you said it's great in the house. How many times, if I had a dime for every time I saw who the identified patient was and how their siblings looked at that person and then talked to that person. And it's like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? As the scapegoat, I mean, I've always been a liar since I was 4 years old. What's it like? That's what he's wow, I can't. I really wish I didn't even start in on this video right now. He is re-victimizing, re-scapegoating, doubling down on the scapegoat child. And yeah, sure, you can look at it and go, well, personality disorders are passed down in families. However, that isn't about genetics. That is about environment. My grandmother, I call her the original gaslighter, the OG, and very narcissistic. I'm sure could have been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. My mother is a sociopath and a narcissist. Her youngest sister, the middle one, managed to become like the empath or whatever. I don't know. Maybe she might even be, well, she probably CPTSD, but she might even, probably has CPTSD. She didn't escape unscathed is what I'm saying. And she might even have BPD for all I know. Looking backwards at some things I witnessed, I kind of have to wonder about that. The youngest sister, definitely NPD. And by the way, her daughter was the other scapegoat who also estranged. But it's us as children. We've just always been that way. It had nothing to do with how we were parented because they were good parents after all, really good parents. He literally just doesn't believe the person who comes to him. He wants to hear both sides of the story. How appealing is this to somebody who's an estranged parent?
Against her sister. Whereas like normal kids who may have had abuse or excuse me, addiction or bipolar, which is not a personality disorder, even though it looks that way, depression, the parents would say, yeah, Billy was great until high school, and then he just became crazy. Well, that's not personality disorder. That's something radically different. The disorder is something that seems to have been built in to the person's DNA. And one of the things that Gunderson noticed is that they don't have this thing called reticular fraction. I think reticular, I forget. It's the part of the human brain that's basically the observing ego.
Okay.
And so they would do things, but they didn't have the conscience that the way they would come across is really problematic in their relationship dynamics. So a narcissist, they would often use an excessive trait of grandiosity in every single situation. So it's like, that's why they're very, very good at being.
Yeah, but how did they become that way? And, there are things that people have genetic predispositions for. Being a psychopath, for example, I believe is one of those. And I know that there's been studies, I'm not quoting them, different things I've read. We can all Google and whatever. Having a hair moment, sorry. He's just making me uncomfortable. Like I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable in my body right now. And that's why I'm fidgeting. Whew, I just noticed that, which tells me something about him. It really, really, really does. Because his demeanor lives somewhere for me. So danger, danger, danger. that's what my body is doing right now. It's like I'm even feeling a little bit of a chill inside, a little freeze happening. So anyway, there have been different studies over the years. I can't quote them. We can go on Google and look at them. If maybe I'll do it and I'll just put it right here for you and that sort of thing. Again, like I've said 60,000 times already, I'm not qualified to diagnose. I'm not a diagnostician or anything like that. I specialize in the recovery of narcissistic abuse victims, that sort of thing, in those family dynamics because of my own experiences, some of my education, and also because that's the speak I do day in and day out. And all that to be said, they've shown that while children can be born, babies can be born with a predisposition to turn into a psychopath, for it to have a, how would you put it? We'll just say to turn into a psychopath. Their environment is either going to support that trajectory or the nurture of their environment is going to depress that trajectory, and that not everybody born with that genetic predisposition is going to go down that path. And that is one of those things that, yeah, it's genetics. NPD, however, I've not seen it proven where it is a genetic factor. And other things he's talking about, interesting that he mentioned bipolar disorder, because that actually does have a genetic predisposition, so or factor to it, right? We see it run in families. He's just decided that the victim is a liar unless they present the way that he thinks that they should be presenting, and that, they've just always been that way, and he needs two sides of the story. Like, he's just heavily playing into all of that. And what it makes me think, because he's a father, is that he is seeing his own future with his own children. I think that at some point, because I don't know how old his children are, I think we're going to find out who they are. I don't know. I just get this little instinct of a feeling. I'd rather be wrong, because I'd rather him be a wonderful father and have healthy, wonderful children. I just don't see that as being a thing, though, based on other videos I've seen of his as well. So I'm not just taking it out of this one interview.
Being CEOs of companies, but they make terrible husbands or terrible wives. It's like it doesn't transfer really well, right?
You can understand that.
Yeah. I mean, so they don't have the observing ego to say, okay, let's shut that off. I had a histrionic client once, which histrionic, the excessive trait is going to be attention seeking, and the deficient trait is shame. So histrionics actually don't feel shame, and which is not good, because you and I kind of want to feel a little bit of shame from time to time if we do something inappropriate. Histrionics never feel that way. And so I hope I'm answering. Yeah. So it seems that what they've realized, it seems to be something that is ingrained in their genetic makeup, had nothing to do with all these like environments that they were in. And that's the best answer.
I think it's a
Yeah.
great answer. I think it also goes in line with, what lately is being understood.
So I was just thinking about how the fact that my mother could say, Marnie's always been a liar. She's always been boy crazy. She's always been promiscuous. I mean, boy crazy, promiscuous, all of those things. She's always been rebellious. She's always been a difficult child. And P.S., I mean, in school, I never got in trouble and I made very good grades. So there's that. Marnie's always been, all these different negative things. Yet here I am as an adult, a mother of three, a grandmother of two, in full-on relationships, very well adjusted, living a very successful life because she no longer has access to me. It just struck me as he's talking about this, like, oh my gosh, what would have happened to me being in therapy with him, with my mother being the overlord that she was and would like to continue to be? What would my life have turned out like? I would have been stuck in all of those coping mechanism kind of behaviors, just struggling my whole life. And it would have looked like because I was the broken one, not because she was trying to break me. I hope he talks about how, these pictures that are painted, he then sees his clients go on to what kind of life. Like, what does that look like? He's not going to. And I'm kind of feeling like many of them are imaginary. I just don't believe anything that he's saying. His body language, his covering of the face, his doing this, just like I'm fidgeting. Well, I'm not doing this, mind you. I'm fidgeting because he's putting me into fucking deep freeze right now. He's fidgeting, I think, because he's thinking about, how do I appear so smart and big and grandiose? Like, I'm just having feelings about him. And the freeze screen that I have here right now, and I'll try to catch it for here, where he's doing this. Minimally, this is him not believing his own bullshit. At a maximum, this is he's lying and he knows it.
Is being understood is that your parents, greatest amount of influence happens up to age 7.
Yeah.
And then after that, it declines. And by the time they're 15, it's all about, the environment, peer, whatnot. They really have near no impact on, on how these kids, the decisions they make that develop over that time.
These kids, it's such a weird way, these kids. We have no impact. Wouldn't it be on how our kids? No, these kids. Do you see the distancing that happens? Because when these kids turn out a bad way, they aren't our kids. That's that language thing that I see repetitively with these kinds of parents and therapists. I know he's licensed, but I just can't. And yeah, our greatest impact is the first 7 years. There's so much development going on. There's so much growth. There's so much observational learning going on. There's also the foundation of safety that's being built and trust, so that when our children become teenagers and they're trying to, stretch their wings. And I mean, I talk about this from time to time. My youngest was my Houdini. We fucking laugh about it to this day. It's funny now, but she was the sneaker outer and all of those things. Lo and behold, though, when I called her, she answered before the first ring even went through. And not because she was already she was terrified or something, but because she knew, okay, I crossed the line. I need to come home because this is upsetting. Having that sort of connection with your children where they know that really you're out there for their best interest, not about controlling them. And when it becomes that kind of setup where you're out there to control them and they go through those years where they're trying to get their autonomy going on, they're going to be less likely to be responsive in a way that considers you at all, because you didn't consider them at all, and they don't know what that looks like. And also, even thinking about the acting out portion of it, I was running away all the time. My mother would have been these kids, the distancing thing. What was I running from? What she didn't form, or what she did form in my first 7 years of life? And is that I'm not valued and I'm in danger, I need to run,
Develop over that time. So when you, and so that's genetics. They come in with 400 and somewhat, set characteristics that never gets talked about, when it comes to this kind of stuff. Because if you're coming in with 400 characteristics, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from mom and dad, and come from great grandpa Harry, well, who the heck knew what great grandpa Harry was carrying? But now it's coming out in your kid, and you're feeling bad because you think you did something to him when it's really just that bad gene. That just, or that one gene, or that one. And so, parents are sitting there and they're saying, wow, okay, I feel bad. I obviously.
Did she just say there's 400 reasons that they can go bad that have nothing to do with how we raise them? Yeah, I snorted.
They did something because throughout history, parents have bore the burden of, well, if something's wrong with your child, or you're an adult child, if you don't have a relation with you did something. And that's what's caused, I think, this.
Yeah, I mean, my channel, it's such a coincidence, but she's your mother, because we never hear about what bad children we are, bad sons and daughters, offspring, for abandoning our parents that we should be grateful for because they gave us life. And it's only them that these judgments happen to. The judgments happen to everyone. The thing is that the judgments actually don't belong on the offspring, because we didn't form ourselves and we didn't form the relationships. That isn't to say that there are no kids who grow up that, it's impossible to be in a relationship with. I mean, my mother's a sociopath and a narcissist. She didn't break herself into that. And if I had been her parent, would I want to be in a relationship with her? Fuck no, she's dangerous. Again, though, she didn't make herself into that. I would have been the person that made her into that. So we shouldn't be looking to escape something that is not factually true. And again, I'm not talking about something that was passed down genetically. And let's talk about the 400 characteristics and all that. I was actually thinking about it today. I have 3 kids, right? 3 adults. I have 2 daughters and a son, and I'm going to talk about my daughters, and I'm allowed to do that. I'm not identifying either one over the other for that matter. It's okay. Everybody knows. We talk about it. Not everybody knows. We talk about this stuff. So, and I'm going to use a really it's not body shaming or anything. It's a thing that we all go through from time to time. Does this make my ankle look fat, or kind of thing, right? So let's say one of my daughters came to me and said, Mom, does this look tight on me? And if I were to go, well, maybe a little this or that, and I kind of work around it, she'd go, Mom, yes or no? And like she would get frustrated because she just wants a yes or no. Her feelings aren't her feelings. She just wants an answer. That's who she is. That feels good to her. That works for her. So she has that one out of the 400 characteristics, let's say. Now my other daughter walks in and she has a different out of the 400 characteristics, let's say. And she asks me the very same question and I say yes. Oh my God. Like she would completely, absolutely melt down with me, not flip out on me, but melt down. It would hurt her feelings. It would live somewhere different with her, not because she's worse than this child or better than this child. They're different people with different characteristics. Hello. Yes. Normal. Doesn't matter if it came from the pie in the sky, the duck down the block. Doesn't fucking matter where it comes from. Yes, we have personalities and different characteristics. If I said to her, maybe like if we adjusted here or something like that, she'd go, oh, yeah, maybe not, but thanks, Mom. And then she'd probably change the outfit or I suggest something else. It ultimately, it's kind of the same answer with different packaging because I'm dealing with two different human beings with different characteristics. And as parents, it is our job to identify what works for each of our children and go in the direction of what works for them so that we don't do things that damage our relationship with them. More importantly, so we don't do things that damages their relationship with themselves and their own self-image. And I'm not just relating to body here. I'm just using something really simple, like conversations we've actually had sort of thing. And by the way, the one who doesn't like it handed to her straight, no, she doesn't like it that way. We talk about it. I ask her, what's a good way to communicate to you if I have doubt? If I feel like I've been harsh to her and she didn't even tell me, I pick up the phone and I go, was I too harsh with you? And not because I'm babying her or placating her or any of those things, but because I want her to know that her feelings actually matter to me. And I want to meet her where she is. And a lot of the time she's like, no, Mom, I'm fine. And other times she's like, Mom, thanks for calling and clarifying that. And the other one, my other daughter's like, I just don't care that much. She's just different. They're different from each other. Okay. I know I keep taking a deep breath. I need it. Like, if you've been with me for a little while, if one of my things is when I'm like triggered, I get like shortness of breath. My breath gets affected. I'm not shortness of breath now, but I can feel like I need to take a deep breath. That's what's happening here.
And that's what's caused, I think, this explosion. Yeah. That silence, wait a minute, how many people, how many parents are struggling under the weight of this and, and the weight of estrangement now. And they haven't been allowed to talk about it. Because there's such shame associated with it and such self-blame too, until that conversation got lit. And then everybody came out of the woodwork and said, yeah, but this is happening to me. And,
until it got lit by her, she's looking for the credit for it. That's what she's setting up for because she's just so fantastical. At some point, I'm going to speed this up again, just so you'll notice the difference. But like, I can't. I need to move through this.
Happened to me, and before, and that's where I ended up, being in this. I lit a conversation, and it just exploded, and but it needed to explode, and it needs to be talked about. Because this is real life.
It needed to explode, not in this way, though. It needed to explode in the way of encouraging estranged parents to go into therapy, to look at their own wounds, to heal their wounds so that they stop doing the things that they've been doing that are fracturing and even blowing up the relationships with their own adult offspring. This conversation does need to happen. We have to stop, though, creating these safe havens that are phenomenally unsafe for estranged parents out there who are helpable, who can benefit from therapy and all of those things. I don't have any problem whatsoever with an estranged parent having a platform and speaking out. I have a problem when they're speaking out in a way that removes our ability to see that we can make change through accountability. This is what my problem is. I think the conversation, I mean, this is giving me an opportunity to have a conversation around that. I wish it was being done where I didn't have to point these things out and that these were the conversations that were becoming part of the norm. Unfortunately, what's becoming a part of the norm is the doormat moms of the world, because they are the ones who are creating content. The other parents that are going to therapy aren't. That's what I'm seeing. Okay, I'm going to speed this up because I really don't want to lose my mind here, and I feel like I'm losing my mind a little bit. Okay, ready? Here we go.
Because it's just real life. And and this is going to not only impact our generation, but it's going to impact multiple generations down the line. What is Carl Pilmer, Dr. Carl Pilmer said, if you estrange from your parents, anticipate that's going to impact 7 generations out. 7 generations is a lot of time.
No, no. Well, I don't know how many generations and whatever. I think all the generations coming forward to the end of time kind of thing, it is going to impact. We are breaking cycles of generational trauma and abuse through estrangement. Would it be nice to not have to do it this way? Yes. If you have a parent, though, who's not going to come to the table and model healthy love for your own children and be a healthy person for you, it is the only way that we can change that dynamic. Otherwise, we stay in these relationships and that role modeling carries on and it leads down into the younger generations. We are changing generations to come. We're not changing them in the way of teaching them not to have family. We're changing them in the way to teach them that we stay in relationships that feel good, that are healthy, that are safe. It doesn't mean that we never have arguments, disagreements, strife, and things like that. It means that what's being modeled rolling forward is that we talk about accountability. We take accountability. It's not a big deal to do so. We have good conversations. We are safe people, right? That's what it means. It's starting to, I hope, fracture the abuse train and break it down until one day it doesn't exist anymore. Do I think that's possible? No, because there's other factors outside of family, like war creates broken people, unfortunately, who then have children and stuff like that. So I don't think we're ever going to be able to eradicate it altogether. I do think, though, we're going to be much more functional as we're aware of what being functional means, looks like, and we don't allow people to have access, particularly to our children, who are going to teach them that you stay in relationships no matter how they make you feel and how you are treated, right? So she's right, it is impacting generations to come. It's just that she's trying to make it seem, I bet you, like it's destroying the families. Well, I have intact relationships with my adult offspring and my grandchildren. I don't have intact relationships with my mother's side, the family of origin. So why is that okay? And this was not.
Are a lot of time. A lot of
5%. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, and I think you bring up some really good points. And I don't, I would like to see psychoeducation on tactics that work. I mean, I am trying to be as careful as I can in my videos on personality disorders, because I actually really like working with this group. I want to get even further certifications, even this year. I want to get like several more. I want to write a book on it. I love working with borderlines who are wanting help. Those are my favorite clients to work with. Narcissists are actually the most treatable of all of them. I'm getting certified at McLean Hospital next week in this thing called mentalization, which is the only treatment modality that works for them. In other words, it gives them the observing ego that I was talking about. If you have a child that has antisocial, yeah, that's not treatable, and it's manageable, but it's not treatable.
Right.
So I have a lot of parents who are like, oh, Johnny just wants therapy. Well, if he's an antisocial, we're gonna have to talk about very, very different things.
Right.
What it does is that it really alleviates the guilt. It alleviates the pressure. It also redirects the field to work on presence, and rather than this revisionist history on blame shifting. Because one of the things that a narcissist does a lot better than you and I do, they will always beat you at your own game of victimization. Same thing with a borderline. Try going in in the ring with a borderline and try playing her game on victim versus persecutor. She will wipe the floor with you. And these parents are exhausted. They don't know what to do. So what I often teach parents is to stay out
I
of
just want to talk about the way that he talks about people. He's dehumanizing, and I really resent it. can we phrase it people with borderline personality disorder, people with narcissistic personality disorder. And I've been guilty of it myself, where I'll say a narcissist here and there, and I try to edit that and not do that. Because at one point in time, these were people who were born innocent and with all the possibilities in the world, and they were broken into something. And I don't think that dehumanizing people is beneficial to any of us. And he consistently does that. And what that says to me is he sees them as products, not people, right? That's how it feels to me. And I think that that's something that would benefit us as a society to get away from, because also, unless you have a diagnosis, I mean, sure, you might have really good markers that goes, that person has a narcissistic personality disorder. Without that, I don't even think we should call them a narcissist. I think that we should call a person, you have narcissistic personality disorder. I think that we should be descriptive in our language, just because we're human beings, right? And I say this coming from a mother who's, Black widow and all the things. And I still look at her as a human being. And I think it's kind of important, because we shouldn't forget that this is what one human does to another. It's not a thing that's causing damage. It's another human. Doing that, sensitizing people to that, keeps us from going, well, they don't look like a monster. Abusers don't look like monsters. They are human beings. And I think it's important to kind of highlight that a little bit.
And these parents are exhausted. They don't know what to do. So what I often teach parents is to stay out of the drama triangle, persecutor, rescuer, victim. Once you kind of see it, there's a huge boundary that just comes up internally that you feel a lot better. I'm a lot better. I'm a lot happier than ever before dealing with this population group. I just kind of stay away from it while it just kind of whirls its wind. Right. And I teach parents the great and statement. The borderline daughter wants you to live in the binary world of black and white. You're either for me or you're against me. I want you to stay out of the drama triangle, simplicity, clarity, and live in the and. I was a good parent, and yes, I lost my temper. I want you to say that to her. She wants to say, no, you lost your temper that one time, Dad, and you're abusive. That's a binary. I want you to live in the and statement, stay out of her tornado. And what he would often do is he would try to justify, no, I wasn't. You're totally.
I want to live in the place. I want you to stay in the place of minimization and not taking accountability and giving weight to what your own daughter is saying to you. Because in this case, he's referencing a daughter, right? Interesting. Well, not really.
He would try to justify, no, I wasn't. You're totally. And she would wipe the floor with him.
Yeah.
And he was exhausted. And then he would make an apology that he really didn't need to make because he actually wasn't in the wrong. But then she was demanding it and she was manipulative. But here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize this. All my borderlines and narcissists, they actually don't trust people that play their game. I don't play their game. And that's why they keep coming back. Right. And that's what's really kind of interesting, because I kind of know what they're doing, but I'm not emotionally inside it. And so if we could teach parents and even healthcare workers, because I actually think a lot of these healthcare workers are buying into this crap and they're telling their kids to cut off when they haven't heard the other story. They have no training in this and they feel justified by telling this poor 23-year-old girl who they think is like.
He knows damn fucking well that professionals out there aren't telling people to cut people off or become estranged. He knows damn fucking well that that's not the case. Again, he's pandering. I'm not saying it never happens. Of course, I'm sure it happens, just like any other, thing. Like, you can't say never. You shouldn't be in absolutes. That being said, the majority, I'll die on this hill, of therapists aren't encouraging or discouraging. What they're doing, if they're doing therapy well, which I think many of us are, they are not like this. They're meeting their client where they are, and they're helping them develop self-esteem and the tools that they need to make decisions on their own, not us suggesting one direction or the other.
Poor 23-year-old girl who they think is like the dad was somehow molesting her, when really it was not. That actually didn't happen. Right. But because of Me Too and because of the way therapy has become highly politicized and very rooted in identity politics, the therapist feels this kind of pressure to 1,000% validate this borderline. And now she feels, yes, I should push her to cut off. And what ends up happening is that borderline, who, by the way, has the highest suicide rate out of all the PDs, now you've just cut off her, kind of what I said over there, the story, her root. And then she's going to give that same drama to people that don't even really care about her. Right. And then what? And how do you follow through with her? So it's a real mess right now. A lot of people don't know.
So CSA is drama. And because they have a personality disorder, automatically you shouldn't believe them. I had said in another video that I think he supports grape culture. He supports grape culture. Look how he just diminished the Me Too movement. We're just jumping on a bandwagon. It didn't happen.
So it's a real mess right now. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're doing. Excuse my French, but it's just like, and I'm realizing that. And I wanted to clean this
mean, you
up.
see it, you see it on TikTok. You see it on
Oh
TikTok.
yeah,
You see it on
it's awful.
Instagram with a lot of the therapists. I'm with you. At the end of the day, what I'm hoping in what I'm doing and the work.
By the way, how much of a piece of shit is she to not bring up and go, well, wait a minute, the Me Too, I mean, woman to woman, no, you have no pushback on that whatsoever. That's wild to me. What the fuck just happened?
I'm with you. At the end of the day, what I'm hoping in what I'm doing and the work that you're doing, whatnot, is that the understanding comes in and we can fix this to a degree that it's able to be, we can fix the family. I think this has been made out to be a I punch you, you punch me on social media a lot of times for the what's the word, drama and the of it all. When I really think that what we should be doing is saying, okay, how do we get it together? How do we get the family back together? That's the point of all of this, right? It's not I win, you win. We either both lose or we both lose if we continue down this path. But I do think
I think it would be great if we could focus on how to get the family back together. I can't believe I'm agreeing with anything she said, but I'm sure she's going to fuck it up. And as soon as I click her back on, I think that one of the steps to repair is having a parent who is modifying their behavior and respecting boundaries to build that sort of trust so that then you can start to take accountability and that sort of thing. And it should not be a tit for tat sort of thing. And when there's a timeline, there's an order of things. And as somebody who has had estranged moms in particular working relationships out with their estranged offspring, a lot of times what I see they want and they need or feel that they need is acknowledgement for the fact that they were abandoned and they were hurt, or you did this thing, and they want, if I'm going to take accountability, you need to take accountability. And it does become that transactional, that tit for tat. I don't want to feel like I'm the only bad guy in the world. And that's the mindset that they're going at. They also want to be seen, because likely the reason that they created the situation they have with their offspring is they weren't seen in their own childhood. So they turned this relationship into one where they would be seen. And that's where you pass down trauma and it really goes sideways, right? And what I try to tell estranged parents, if you're an estranged parent out there, listen up, ears up, is that if you go in looking for them to take accountability because they hurt your feelings or because you felt abandoned, I'm not diminishing how you feel. I'm just saying this is what you're looking for. You might as well not even bother, because you aren't recognizing that the reason that the relationship had the breakdown that it did was because the foundation, you did it first. Let's just say it that way. You did something in the foundation that created a situation where that person, your own child, didn't want, or adult offspring didn't want to connect to you anymore. And likely your behaviors towards them never changed because you didn't evolve from being the parent of a child to being in a relationship with an adult who happened to be your child. And so the first place that you need to go is, one, you are blindly respecting their boundaries. And there's not going to be that many of them. And I know I say it blindly that way because you don't need to question what their boundaries are. Mom, when I tell you that I'm starting a business, I don't want you to point out all the things that can fail. I just need you to be happy for me and leave me the space for the solicited advice. Don't give me unsolicited advice. Blindly respect that boundary. But I know they're going to crash and burn. That's okay. Inside voice. Period. Don't fucking do it. Because when you don't do it, you are now building trust that you can respect their boundary, and your opinion actually is going to mean more to them when they ask for it. The other thing in that is when they're looking for accountability, I don't remember it that way, or you don't know how bad I had it, or I did better than my parents did. Throw that shit out. Gone. Bye. I'm sorry I hurt you. Well, Mom, do you remember it that way? Well, no, I don't remember it that way. However, I can see it hurt you. And to me, that's all that matters. So how do I help you now? Just because I didn't experience it the way that you did doesn't mean that I can't recognize that it hurt you. I love you so much. I want to help to heal this wound that I caused. I understand that it might be important for you to remember it exactly the same way. I don't, if you don't, or I do, or I could see where, yeah, I remember this part. At the end of the day, my memory doesn't matter, your experience does. And if that's the thing that you really drill down in there, that is everything. I've been there, I've done this, I've seen it done. And at no point in time, I don't care if you have to wait a year, 2 years. In fact, I encourage you, wait a year, 2 years. Do you bring in how you felt when they left? You go to therapy and you deal with your feelings. Your feelings are not their responsibility. Them walking away was because of a fire that you started. They didn't light the match, like they reacted to what was being put at them. And now you want to hold them responsible for hurting your feelings in the face of you not respecting theirs. It doesn't work. And if you want it to work, this is the way you go about it. And you know what's funny is more times than not, you find that you don't care about them apologizing anymore for hurting your feelings or the fact you felt abandoned, because you are enjoying the relationship that you rebuilt and built. It just fades away. And what's even funnier is after it fades away and they experience some more life, our children, not they, our children experience more life, maybe our adult offspring, maybe they become parents themselves, or they're now in whatever it is, they start experiencing more life. Funny how that comes back around and they go, you know what? I didn't realize how much you did. And you get that appreciation and that seeing that you were so craving in the first place. You have to be patient, and you have to stop buying into instant gratification that just makes you feel good in the moment, because you need to look at how things age and figure out, well, how am I going to feel over there if I do this now and I have to live the whole rest of my life without my adult offspring, and I find out I could have done it differently? Like, come on, think forward. Don't think about how it feels right in this moment. You're not going to die from your feelings. And I say this a lot lately, your relationship is going to die forever if you don't figure it out.
It's not, I don't win, you don't win. We either both lose or we both lose if we continue down this path. But I do think there are, and I don't want to ever say that all these therapists out there are bad. That's absolutely not the truth.
No,
That is not the truth. There's some amazing, you among them, but there's some amazing mental health professionals. And then there are a lot of mental health professionals that are, as I believe what you said, they just don't know what they're dealing with. The problem with their situation, though, is they gain power quickly by feeding the narrative, or feeding the, and then what happens is they boldly go into areas that only help to damage things more. And maybe it's, it could come very well by thinking that they're doing the right thing, when they just don't know what they're doing, and they're causing so much damage. And let's talk about it. I mean, I do have to say this. There's a huge amount of money being made on this estrangement and on this.
1,000%.
Huge. And I really always suspect when you see like $1,000 course.
They're both making money on it. What are you pointing out? They're both making money on it. Are we going to tell on ourselves? Oh, please tell on ourselves. Okay. Not ourselves, themselves.
Always suspect when you see like $1,000 courses and or beyond, and conferences that are just like through the roof, and you're playing on people's, you're really playing on people's trauma, their people's suffering, and everybody's got to make money, but I think there's a reasonable amount to be made, and then there's people that are just taking advantage of it and just clicking, and I hate to see that. I absolutely hate to see that. Because it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And then, you do get some therapists that are really, they're just, I'm going to say, I've seen therapists on TikTok that are really just being actively destructive and should not be practicing overall. Then get a large social media following.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, So, I'm saying,
So the ones she's referring to, because she's gone off after them on TikTok, are the ones who support victims and survivors and talk about estrangement and don't blame them for walking away from their parents. They also talk about repairing families and accountability, and I know the different ones that she's referring to, and they are very responsible in their messaging, and they're not pushing one thing in one direction or another. They also talk about child development. They talk about emotional safety. Estrangement isn't the only thing that they talk about. I know exactly who she's talking about. I've seen some of their content, and really, I just like, at least, well, of course, she's not going to tell the truth. She doesn't want any therapist out there who supports somebody walking away from their parent. That's the bottom line. And she doesn't want any therapist out there who tells a parent they need to take accountability. That's the other bottom line. And she likes him. Do you see how she worked that in there? Uh-huh.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I'm seeing that too. But the thing is, I like what you said about the but and the and. I was going to ask you about that because I agree. I really think that the and gets left out of the equation. Especially when it comes to good parents. That yes, I did this, but I was also a good parent. Or yes, making an easy solution thing.
Yes, I did this, and let me now discount it. The but me and is exactly the opposite of what you should be doing if you want to repair your relationship, because it's exactly how you are invalidating that other person's experience. But me and belongs fucking nowhere. Own something, leave it there, heal it. Why do you need to give a reason when somebody's telling you, like, you hurt me? Why do you need to make a reason out of it? Why can't you just say, I'm so sorry. How can I help heal this wound I caused? Or I'm so sorry. What do you need from me now? Why do you have to say, I'm so sorry, but it was this and it was that? And make it about you. Oh, that's why. Oh, okay.
Making an easy solution thing. You wanted skis. I bought you a pony, and I gave the skis to your brother. That's true. But I was hoping that I thought that Anna was a good person for buying you a pony.
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
sure. Yeah.
So, how much of this do you think is also caused by social media, loneliness, and the age of ease?
Yeah, I saw a shift. That's a great question. I was thinking about this. I think, how did the shift happen? I think the shift, and this might be controversial, I'm going to say it anyway. It really happened with George Floyd, not COVID. Because what George Floyd did, it put identity politics in the very, very premise of every single institution. And I mean schools, social media, Hollywood, everywhere.
Yeah.
You're either a racist or you're not, or you're an anti-racist. I should start there because that's where I used to trust all the therapists, even like I'm on a floor of therapists, and I may trust two. Don't tell anybody, while you're on this floor. I used to have dinner with these people. I used to love meeting with these therapists. Now a guy just asked me the other day, I need family therapy. And I said, sorry, man, I don't know who to trust. I hate saying that, but George Floyd, there was something about George Floyd, that whole thing, they made everything about identity politics. It's either you believe all women or you're a sexist. You're either for the transing of kids or you're a transphobe.
Right.
You're either a Nazi or you're anti-Trump.
Right.
Or you get what
You see how he went? It's either you believe all women or, right? He guns for grape culture. I'm telling you right now, there's something really wrong with this individual. And I'm not going to get into, well, everybody knows, if you've been with me, we are inclusive of all here. So fuck that. So estrangement isn't because of what's going on with the family. You're finding something else to blame. Like it just blew up because of racism? Is he trying to talk about because of how families have split apart in their political beliefs? That is just another part of something that happens. But like if you're a cohesive family unit and you have healthy, loving relationships, and you're respectful of each other's opinions and wants and needs and desires, then it's splitting apart because somebody voted one way and somebody voted another way isn't hugely likely, because you're not trying to disrespect each other's values. It's going to split apart because of your behavior attached maybe to how you voted and how you treat the other person. I think that's where it breaks apart. And again, I'm very careful about not talking about politics on this platform because of the fact that abuse survivors, people who are going through estrangement, come from all walks of life, all different political beliefs, all sorts of, economic backgrounds, and, all the things, anything that you can imagine. And I refuse to isolate anyone or turn somebody away because of talking about politics. I am here for the healing of relationships, the primary one being the relationship that we have with ourselves, because if we have a really good relationship with ourselves, the people we choose to allow have access to us are going to be people we are also in healthy relationships with. And so that's why I'm very careful about this. It's not that I don't care. It's not that I don't have my own beliefs and opinions and things like that. I do care. It's this channel has a very specific dedication. And so I also am if I have a comment that in any way looks like racially motivated, for example, it never makes it to the light of day. And if it happens to, because YouTube didn't put it in my bucket, I do delete it and I do report it. I will not allow it. I've been called some pretty choice names that actually shook me, and I reported them. I don't allow space for that. So just so that we're clear here.
Either a Nazi or you're anti-Trump.
Right.
Or you get what I'm saying. It's just kind of like the whole world became a binary on that day.
Yeah.
And now what's going on with almost all of the social work, and I know this because I know what they're teaching, because I know the social workers, and these are the people I'm trying to hire, and I'm not being able to hire very many of new therapists. I mean, because I know what they're being taught. They're being taught.
Remember when I said earlier on, he is only going to have therapists in his practice who push his narrative? There you go.
I know what they're being taught. They're being taught to basically view the world in this kind of oppressor versus oppressed lens. And what that feeds, it's so funny because that's borderline right there. And
that's not true. Again, I don't know a ton of I'm not in school to be a psychologist right now, right? I know enough to say this, though, that by and large, most programs are supporting trauma-informed care, which is extremely important for the safety of our clients. And also within that, one of the things that we learn when we're going into therapy work, regardless of what courses you take, regardless of whether or not you're a PhD, or I don't have a degree in psychology, just so you all know, just to be very clear. I have certifications in different areas that allow me to help my clients in the best way to meet their needs for the types of clients that I have. That's where I'm at. And, I'm not him, right? I don't have his level of education for sure. And yeah, I think I'm okay with that. The opposite of what we do is black and white, thinking. The thing that you do when you're dealing with trauma survivors, because trauma survivors are black and white thinkers, not just people with borderline personality disorders. Trauma survivors tend to be very black and white thinkers, and our job is to bring the gray back in. And that has nothing to do with our politics or any of these things that he's trying to deflect what's really going on here. He's trying to create it. Look over here at the distraction. It's not the family unit's dysfunction. It's the therapist's fault. And I'm here to tell all you parents you are perfectly amazing and great. Come, I'll heal your wounds by my programs. And by the way, if your child says to me that you committed CSA, I don't believe them. They're just rewriting history.
And that's all. It's a borderline behavior, I should say. And that feeds social media. Social media lives off of the algorithm of personality disorder types of traits. That's what Greg Luster even said. Right. Narcissism, all of that stuff. It's just the algorithms goes through the roof.
Right.
So now you have a very, what I would say, highly unethical therapeutic system, APA, I do not trust anymore. Even a guy, follow the guy, and his name is Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. Love him.
Okay.
He has really criticized the APA in the past several years. Same thing with Steven Pinker, who's a
Okay.
linguist. Yeah, over here at Harvard, over there at Harvard, very, very critical, because he's very critical in the sense that we've allowed politics and division inside institutions that should be trustworthy. And now we're making money, but it's no longer about ethics. Ethics does not sell. Exaggeration sells, but
Yeah.
ethics doesn't sell. And so, to answer your question, I think that's, therapists are now feeding off that, thinking that what they're doing is a noble cause, but we've lost, a lot of the what
Ethics
makes a
does
good
not
therapist.
sell, as I diminish the experience of people who jumped on the bandwagon of, Me Too. And by the way, they're probably all borderline personality disordered. Right.
But we've lost, a lot of the what makes a good therapist. Number one, a good therapist would never even tell anybody to cut off anybody. When somebody says to me that they're even being verbally berated by their wife or by their husband.
Sorry. No, because I was going like this. I'm taking that back. You have somebody who is physically unsafe, cut them the fuck off and get a restraining order. Yeah. A good therapist, if somebody is in danger, is absolutely going to encourage safety and cutoff. You've got a person in a domestic violence situation, you're not going to encourage them to get to safety and cut off the person who's being violent. What? Hopefully he makes an allowance for that. Oh, and by the same token, a good therapist also doesn't diminish your experience and validate it, tell you are rewriting history, let me talk to your parents and get their side of the story. A good therapist doesn't encourage you to stay in a bad relationship. They also don't encourage you to make a decision in any direction or the other. They give you the tools so you can make your own fucking decisions. Safety notwithstanding, as we, just covered.
Their husband, I don't tell them to divorce, because I was taught in grad school way back in 2009. That's unethical, because as a therapist, if you were coming to me and say, Peter, I'm thinking of divorcing my husband, I wouldn't tell you should, or I wouldn't tell you shouldn't. Even if he was berating you, the minute I say to you, well, I think you should, I've just become, from therapist to now I become the perpetrator. And you look to me as a dependent source of, of information. That's not the job of a therapist. The job of a therapist is to put it back on you and let you make your own decisions. So we've really lost our way. We've lost our vision. We've lost our sense of direction through all this mess. It's really sad, because,
as he has said over and over in other videos, you shouldn't be cutting off your parents. You should be learning how to be more resilient so you can withstand their bad behavior. His job is to put it back on the client so that they can make decisions while he's telling them what decision to make.
And I think a lot of people who get into therapy, they're highly empathetic people. And so I think there's a naive reason and malicious reason what goes on here. I think the naive reason is like, they just really want to support their client, and they think trauma probably has something to do with it. And I get that. I've been there too. But you have, I don't mind naming her, because I think codependency Kate comes to mind. Very, very, very toxic. I'm like, how are you even ethically licensed? She is one of the most unethical people I think I've ever. I mean, my jaw dropped at the stuff that she was saying.
Yeah.
She breaks every single ethical code in the book, and she's got 285,000 followers. She's doing well, and yet highly unethical. And like it's just like I would never tell my client to do that. That's basic ethics 101. And I think she's doing it for a very malicious reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about this, and I get it, because then I have a lifelong client, and now you're dependent. And I hope I answered your question. I don't want.
Well, you brought up so much. So
What a fucking liar. I mean, I've not watched all of her videos. He's not giving you an example of what she's done or said that's unethical. It isn't unethical to tell a client that you don't believe that they've been through, CSA. I keep going back to that because it's just stuck in that's not unethical. It's not unethical to disbelieve your client and to further traumatize them. And our clients that estranged, we have them as clients forever. Bullshit. Quite the opposite. Because when somebody's no longer being abused and traumatized and set on fire, you're actually treating the wounds, and they're beginning to heal and grow into their own, where actually they don't need you anymore. That's what, when a client comes in and they're able to heal from the things that they need to heal from, And sometimes they can do that within the relationship if there's no longer things being perpetrated. In that case, they can be in it and also heal the wounds kind of thing. Or it requires moving away from the relationship, maybe not complete estrangement, maybe, distance, whatever it is. Once they start to work on healing those wounds while simultaneously growing their self-love and their self-esteem, guess what happens? They don't need you, and they may never need therapy again. If they stay in a relationship where they're continually being hurt and harmed, they're going to need therapy for support to be able to continue to navigate that relationship. And that's what he actually positions himself to do. He has positioned himself, he's put himself in a place where he is making it very difficult for a person to walk out of a relationship. He's saying the cutoff, he's making it seem like a bad thing, because then you're going to need him forever as long as you're still being harmed. You're going to need him for venting support, if nothing else. And look how she laughed at codependent. Like, they hate her. They hate her. And look, I don't know a ton about her. I do know the content that I've seen of her, though. I'm kind of like, yeah, okay. I haven't seen her telling people to cut off. I've really seen her like break down relationships, dynamics, talking to estranged parents about repair and accountability. I've seen her talking about all sorts of things within family dynamics, not just estrangement. And you see how he mentioned the followers? He's so fucking jelly. He's so jelly because she's making more money than him on TikTok, at least.
Well, you brought up so much. So, it's also power. There are a couple, and like I said, she was one that I was thinking of when I was telling you on these platforms.
Oh, yeah.
Really destructive. I had a run-in with her, and I had a run-in with another therapist, Dr. David Simonson, Doc Davey goes by, who actually pretended to be my son and did it so well and did not put in bold letters, "I'm only kidding," that people kept flooding now I met your son and he said all these things. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And then I saw him, I'm like, he's like my age. You think he's my son? And it was just a spiraling thing. It was just so crazy that the lines he crossed were unbelievable a few times. You know what? So I agree. That's when I go back and say some of these therapists are really damaging. But
okay, so Doc Dave, and I like the majority of his content actually, and I have a feeling he's a really good therapist. I find him to be very well balanced. I don't watch all of his content, but what I've seen, I like. He did a thing like he's her son when she was doing her outrageous thing. And I'm sure she's also angry because I think what he does is he uses a video from another creator, much like what I'm doing now. And then he responds to it and he breaks it down and he does a thing. He's over on the TT. He might have a channel on YouTube. And he's definitely involved in like a lot of the estrangement stuff and things like that, and talks about accountability. And he really tells it like it is. Like, I don't find that he's leaning one way or the other. He also doesn't let parents off the hook. However, he's not just tunnel visioned in any way. Like, I think he's constructive. Let me put it that way. Anyway, he did this video and lots of people did think he's her son. And you see, we're the same age. Like, she's really offended by that. And should he have put somewhere in there, and maybe he thought, I don't buy into this thing of, I'm reading somebody's mind, but maybe he thought that people common sense would see, yeah, they're close in age. And a lot of people really believed him because he did it really, really well. And he was just basically, memory serves, like poking holes in her narrative. That's all he was doing. Look how I had a run-in. I was dragged into a magazine interview. Yeah, right.
A few times. You know what? So I agree. That's when I go back and say some of these therapists are really damaging, but there are a lot of them that are good. And when you say about the whole thing about George Floyd, it's interesting because I just wrote a piece because I'm a journalist too, right? So I just wrote a piece.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And it was talking about what you were just saying, and it was talking about how this country was founded on unity. Country was founded in unity, and the reality is it was unity because everyone came to it with the differences. We had differences, right? We were all different. We were coming to everything different, and so you need unity. Unity needs differences to exist. All right. So otherwise, what you have is sameness. All right. Everybody's got to be the same. All right. So when you come to let's say a country and you come in with differences, whether it be the left, the right, religious difference, what have you. All right. You take those differences, you keep those differences, and you build a framework that allows for these differences, but a framework that works even with those differences inside, because that a framework that provides the unity, and you move over together for a reason, a unified reason. When we started this country, it was we wanted a new country. So we had to take those differences and we had to say, okay, we can allow for them, we can work with them. The goal is to have this unified country. And then you work to create that, right? You didn't say get rid of the difference or you need to become me, okay? And now I see it from the George Floyd. I agree with you. Sameness is getting pushed. If you don't believe the same thing as me, I can't sit at the dinner table with you. If you don't believe the same thing as me, whether you're whatever you're, then I can't really talk to you. If you don't believe the same, if you don't understand that you're abusive because I say you're abusive, but and you don't agree with me, then you know what, I can't go on with you.
Oh yeah.
Or
How can she compare people not aligning or agreeing with each other with, if I say you're abusive and you don't agree you're abusive? I feel like that's the direction that she's moving in. No, if I say you fucking hurt me, you fucking hurt me. How about that? These two things are not related in that way. I know where they're going. I know what they're trying to do. And again, I'm not going to play into the distraction of that part. The politics that are going on in the world did not cause the destruction of family relationships. Are there situations where that's probably the bigger part of the picture that has created that division? I'm sure there is. However, let's talk in the majorities. The majority of what's happened here is that we have a generation of parents who, I don't like the word raised, grew up, a generation of adults who, rather than stay put no matter what happened, no matter what you did, not hold you accountable because that generation of parents did that and expected the next generation to do the same, said, no, we know we don't have to do that. And we know that if you don't want to come to the table, you don't have to. We're also not going to eat at that same table with you. Like this, they're muddying. They do this on purpose. This is like, and I'm not saying they're narcissists, but this is like narcissistic textbook 101. Let me pull everything in I can so that I can muddy the waters from the real issue. And the real issue is that if you aren't creating a safe relationship with your children, and then in adulthood, you aren't evolving into being in relationships with adults rather than being parents of children, you're going to have breakdowns in your relationships. If the foundation that you started on is a good foundation and you have those breakdowns, you're probably going to survive that and come back together. If the foundation that you built on was a shitty foundation and then you're not evolving and doing any better, you're going to be in an estrangement. And it doesn't matter who is running for what office and what thing is happening, because at the end of the day, you fucked up your relationship for whatever reason and you don't want to do any better to make it better. And we're not going black and white here. I'm just pointing out that they're really trying to bury the fact that our most primal, strongest relationship we're ever going to have in this universe is with our parents, and primarily with our mother. We're born, they are our first love, and you have to work really hard to destroy that. And the other things can be factors that impact. However, the impact, how hard it hits, it is dependent on what the foundation looks like. And the buck does stop there.
You don't agree with me, then you know what, I can't go on with you.
Oh yeah.
Or if I don't apologize when I tell you need to apologize because I'm saying you did this wrong, and you're saying, yeah, but I didn't say that, certainly didn't mean it, and I don't agree that that's what you're telling me. That's exactly what I said and I meant. No, then I can't have a relationship. So this is going on all over the place.
100%. Yeah.
It's going on across the board in every aspect, and there are no good examples of unity in this country or in many cases around the world right now because we're exploding. So the reality is, if you give that to people, that's a trickle down effect, right? So you go from the top
Yeah.
down. If you don't have any good examples, then you adopt that, that thinking, right? And if you're getting condoned and you're saying, okay, good for you, you're doing this, which is what's happening a lot of the time.
Mhm.
What do you have? You have people pushing against each other,
Yeah.
and you have parents pushing against kids, kids pushing against parents. And then on top of it, you have this new dynamic where, parents are no longer the major influence in children's lives. All right. Where it used to be that they were, because we grew up in a community, we grew up in a family, we grew up with grandparents that were involved. And, they basically almost lived with us or did live with us. And then you have now society that wants that power too. You got the environment, the peer, and they can't exist equal. One has to give to the other. So right now, the external world is taking over, and parents are feeling, parents are their influence is so much less, yet they're getting all the blame.
Yeah.
So many cases.
100%. No, I like that.
Parents are she almost said it. She almost said parents are failing, and you see how she corrected that, and like, really, and he's just like, okay, what are you saying? What happens when you get two people who word salad? This is what it looks like.
They're getting all the blame.
Yeah.
So many cases.
100%. No, I like that. Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, that's a good question I'd love to ask you. And why do you think that even occurs? So from your perspective too.
I really think it is one, the larger influence, the larger environment that technology has provided, right? So I think that's one thing, because their world now is a much bigger world than you and I when we were growing up, right? So when we were growing up, our world what basically consisted of school, the people in school, what have you, our peer group and whatnot. Now their peer group, their world, it is the world, right?
Yeah.
And I also think they never turn off. All right. So I don't think they even they have the ability to even know themselves, because they never turn off. They never go quiet. It's really uncomfortable for them to go quiet. Right. And in that, so they're lost because they never give them really themselves time to get to know themselves. And that I'm going to bring in another aspect of that. Faith, the loss of faith in this country too has added to that, because you've taken that structure away from the family, away from the foundation. You also they don't have any space to even get to know God. That's been ripped and said, that's a fallacy. So you don't have that anymore to anchor. But a lot of the foundation of what we grew up with, and I'm saying it's been torn away. Where it's now, you don't need to be loyal. It is about you. And part of this is the gentle parenting movement. Part of it is, that you're the peer, right? So you're the peer. So I think a lot of it all goes back to, that kind of stuff where, I think my dogs just went out there. Guys, guys, stop. What is there a deal?
So none of it is because of bad parenting. None of it is the parents' fault. It's everything else is a contributor, except for the most important relationship we'll ever have in this universe. That's my takeaway. Let me see if I can make her even faster, because I'm like, holy shit, I'm making her fat. Ready? Maybe she'll sound like a chipmunk.
That's all right. Yeah, it's part of life. You're describing this. Like, life is happening all around you.
Life is happening. And so it's one of those things where I'm going to stop them. Peter, give me a second.
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. I have one dog. So
Okay.
I have a dog. I have a dog myself. I know exactly how that's like. Yeah.
You never want to come to my house. They'll rip your apart.
Yeah. Mine is a terrible guard dog, so she's adorable. She'll just like rip you to death. So yeah. No, I like where you're going there. So,
but it's really so true. So you're putting a lot upon the old way, blaming a lot of the old way, when so much of the dynamic has changed in such a large way that it's conflicting. And I think these kids are truly, they're buckled into easy. We've given them, and I often say this too. They're buckled into easy, so they almost don't want to do the work to help themselves, is one, because that's hard. Like you said, it takes courage. All right. And they're listening to their peers, and they're getting validation from that too. And they're even growing fan bases on that. So that sort of locks them in. Right. So I think that's happening too. But I also think there's a problem in our society today, and that people fail to even recognize. And that is that 10-year additional gap we've given these young adults to remain in the child mindset. And what I mean is, when you and I turned 18, we had to make a choice. You worked, you went to college, or that was it. You worked, you went to college, you did something. You wanted to get out of your parents' house,
Mm.
and you wanted to start your life. You wanted to, do something. And it was almost an embarrassment when you didn't do something and you were
Mhm.
still home with your, well,
Yeah.
but then now you have a situation where you added in a 10-year span called emerging adulthood. And I think how this has been interpreted, emerging adulthood has been interpreted, is it's an extra 10 years that you can just play around with. And I could really think at this point, kids are sort of looking at this, they almost got a break.
Mm.
And still
Mm.
being child, like in many ways, a childlike mind, a childlike, situation where, they expect parents to, to continue to care for them, continue to carry the load, continue to pay certain things, continue, continue,
Yeah.
continue. And then they're at 30 and now they're ready to start their life. Well,
Yeah.
parents are like, I mean, generationally, we were like, yeah, but when we were 18, we're up and out. And I was like, what is going on with you? You really do need
Mm.
and I think that has something to do with it. And I think it's valid that you just
Yeah.
like, when you were shoved and you said, look, you need to grow up. You need to get out there. You had that pressure on you. You grew up and got out there. And I
Right.
think that's a part of this whole thing because they're not, I think it actually adds to this whole, because you're seeing these adult kids on, these various social media platforms kicking back. They're like in their 26, 27, and they're
Mhm.
still, leaving
Yeah.
these terrible comments on, if anyone has anything going on that isn't working towards saving this.
So I'm taking great pleasure in speeding this up, and I hope you guys can tolerate it, but I just can't tolerate it much longer. Again, everything and everything. Like, what does leaving home a little later have to do with leaving home a little earlier? What does any of this have to do with actual the relationships that we do or don't have with our parents, and estrangement and all that? None of it is mathing. None of it is making, it's all word salad. It's all stuff that's not talking about the real stuff. So they've really run the gamut of just pointing out all these different things to blame. And that's really the bottom line here. So I'm going to keep it at the speed, and we're just going to let this play out.
I think that's part of it. I think it's all part of it. And I think it really is only going to get worse if, we don't get into control of it, especially with social media. I think we're just seeing the beginning of it, honestly. If,
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, no, well, it's hard to tell where we're going to go with that. I mean, it is, I mean, or the cause of it. I mean, I'm still playing around with whether or not, like, if this is, there has been a lot of like the coddling of the American mind that has occurred, as Jonathan Haidt likes to say. Coddling is really kind of an interesting style too, because when you coddle your kids, you take them away from risk, and that prevents them from improvising the real world.
Right.
There is one of the biggest, I would say, mistakes that we as parents, I can speak for myself here too, I'm just as guilty of it, is the cult of safetyism. And my job as a parent, I'm parent 3 kids, is not to keep my kids safe.
Right.
It's to prepare them for the real world that has a significant amount of risk.
Fuck off.
Right.
Your job as a parent is to keep them safe and give them the ability to experiment and take risks, knowing that they're safe in doing so, that you're going to have their back and you're going to be their soft place to fall. Your job is to keep them safe and help guide them into making good decisions for themselves based on their own needs, not pleasing you, all of that kind of thing. He also likes to talk about, like, I can't even remember the words that he used, but he likes to use words in a certain way to sound very official and all this and that. And if you look back at the other video that I did of him, people ask him, well, what does that mean? And he doesn't respond. And Doc Dave, actually going backwards, they kind of had a little tete-a-tete going back and forth. And Doc Dave is, show me, bring it to me. And he didn't respond because he's got nothing. He's full of shit.
No, so that's something
It's
that
not
hasn't
your
changed.
job.
I also, another influence of mine that has been very predominant in my thinking is a guy named Ian McGilchrist, and he wrote a book called The Master and His Emissary. And I'm simultaneously, well, right now I'm reading a book called Against the Machine, and that talks about how Western society has really been dominated by this kind of mechanicistic, I should say bureaucratic mode of thinking. And now you're seeing that with AI.
Right.
And McGilchrist's main point in his book, Master and His Emissary, is that we have 2 parts of our brains, the left and the right. The right, though, actually sees the whole picture, and context, relationships, meaning, embodiment. The left, that handles abstraction or categories, tools, manipulation. And what McGilchrist's premise is that we live in a very, and you can tell this by our culture, very much in a left brain dominant mode of attention.
So in all of these books that he reads, he doesn't talk about, and he went to Body Keeps a Score, how trauma impacts the formation of our brain, how emotional abuse causes the same rewiring as other types of abuse. He doesn't go into how we heal from trauma. Like, he's a licensed therapist. in nowhere, has he at any point talked about how we heal from trauma? Has he recognized trauma? This video is an hour long, and as a licensed therapist, I have not heard him, unless like I'm so hijacked in the brain right now, which is possible, talk about the healing of trauma or anything like that. Now I expect it from her because she's she's in denial of any sort of any reason that, oh well, I think she said severe abuse, she did the thing, right? He's a licensed therapist, and I have not heard him in 1 hour in talking about family dynamics and relationships and things like that, legitimate childhood trauma. In fact, I've heard him negate it. I've heard him say how people are just born with personality disorders and they were always that way. That is very fucking remarkable. And so I'm going to try to play this out without any more commentary and like leaving it right here. I cannot guarantee you. I am just over it. And I think I'm over it because of that more than anything else. It's just what they're doing here is like, it just makes me feel so sad for any estranged parent out there or any person who has borderline personality disorder who's going to feel like I shouldn't go do therapy now because of this, that, or the other. I'm not going to be believed, or because I want to believe it's not my fault. Or I find this to be really disheartening, heartbreaking, devastating, damaging, all the things. I didn't know what to expect when I watched this video. I'm watching it fresh as you are. I definitely did not expect this.
You have two brains that pay attention differently.
Right.
And you can even see this with artwork. If you go back to the Renaissance or you go back to Romantic painting,
Right.
you walk inside, even if you're an atheist, which I'm not, but like one point I actually was, and I went to the St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City when I was an agnostic atheist, and I just felt like I needed to worship. And this is coming from like this 20-year-old kid, and it's vast. That's the right brain. It makes you, it helps you see the whole picture. Schizophrenia is a very brand new diagnosis, believe it or not.
Really?
Autism, we didn't see that until recently. And what McGilchrist's point is, that's a left brain dominant shift of thinking. And you can see it even in the artwork. Go to the Modern Art Museum. There is no vastness. It's like a giant eyeball.
Right.
It's also focused on ugly. You know, I brought my kid to the MFA, all three of my kids, and we walked through the modern art section. And my little 8-year-old looks at me and says, Daddy, I could do a lot of this better than this person can. I'm like, yeah, you probably can. And my other girl, who's 13, she says, Daddy, I don't like that part. It's ugly. And she's right. And I don't look at that as like the artists are bad, because what art is just a reflection of what our culture pays attention to.
Right.
And so we've lost the integration of the right. And I think that's why people are starting to cut back. I actually, my prediction, believe it or not, I have a different prediction, because I look at it from a broad view. I mean, I actually think we're going to have a more religious society in 20 years, because those are the only people that are going to be having kids. Not right now. You have to look at who's having children. The people who are cutting off, what I've realized with a lot of them, they're dinks, dual income, no kids.
Right.
And what that tells me is that, okay, you're okay cutting off your mom and dad, but you're too chicken, you're too scared, you're too terrified to look into the abyss and have a child yourself, because you think that you may replicate it. So instead of,
Oh my gosh. I have had so many different people that I've had touches with, clients, other people, like who are beyond the age of having children now, who live in regret of that because they thought that they would replicate it. And he just totally diminished and minimized that. If you're taught your whole life that there's something wrong with you, and you, especially like if you get into therapy late, or you struggle having healthy relationships because of how you did the love that you know, which was cruelty and all of that shit, and you lose the opportunity to have children that maybe you couldn't even think about at the time because you were trying to pick up your own pieces. And look what he just did. He said they're not brave enough. Or maybe they had the bravery to go, you know what, it stops with me. Like, there's different situations, right? Some people are like, I know I'm not going to pour into a child what I wish had been poured into me. Not because I'm broken, because that's how I feel, but that's not being brave. Like, there's so many different situations. Look what he just fucking did. He's that man who stands on the throat of women, you know? That's what I feel like.
So instead of reconciling with your mom and getting to know her, your dad, you would rather just cut off, be bitter, and live for yourself and just not have kids. I don't see a lot of the people
Well,
that are
first
cutting
of all,
off
if
as,
that's your decision, what the fuck is wrong with that? Okay. And? Oh no, it's better to have kids because we're supposed to and then abuse them. So they need therapy for the rest of their lives. It's better not to know what you want or to go against what you want and what you know your capacity is. Better to like do what everybody tells you you're supposed to do and be pressurized into it and mistreat those kids or abuse them. That's a way better. Yeah, what are we thinking? There are so many people who probably wouldn't have had kids that ended up mistreating or abusing their kids, you know, passing down trauma, all the different things that only had their children because they didn't know how not to, because of judgment, because of religion, because of all these different things. He's
I
an
don't see a lot of the people that are cutting off as people that are family people. And if they are, I see it as like for a little while, but they break down, especially in teenage years.
Yeah.
Because in teenage years, those kids really rebel and they start to go against their own ego. And then that's when they want to reconcile maybe a little bit back to their mom and dad who they cut themselves off with. But at that point, it's too late because
Right.
it's like at that point, gosh, now you're facing like your mom's maybe like 70 or 80
Right.
and you've just waited that long.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of things going on. I mean, I think right now with AI and this mechanicistic, kind of it's where abstraction is very much dominating in our culture. And so what
Right.
that means is that meaning is collapsing everywhere. And so people are longing for some type of meaning.
Right.
And that's even the problem with a lot of mental health. Mental health is disconnected with philosophy. And that's a problem because philosophy answers deeper questions than just kind of like the, what do you feel? That doesn't mean anything if it's not connected to a greater sense of reality or a greater dominant mode of attention.
Right.
So I think I'm playing around just with a lot of different themes as I get into this on like how do we address it? Because I also think I want to move ahead. I also want these parents have cut off. Let's prepare for that not happening, but also where can we steer our culture to a healthier, view of reality, which is what I would like to do. It's just,
I'm
'cause then
just
that gives you
watching
hope.
her try to get the word in edgewise as he brags about all the books he's read.
Because then that gives you hope in
Yeah.
the midst of suffering. And
I think that's a great way of thinking, and I think that's a great place to leave off for our next conversation.
oh yeah, right, yeah, sure.
Because you have a child to pick up, and
I do. I do.
All right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a great way of looking at it. And I'm making
Yeah.
more thoughts. Like you're talking about the pendulum swinging back almost, it's gone one way all the way. Now it's coming back. So that's a good way of thinking of it too. We'll talk about that in the next.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
And right there.
All right. Thank you for the work you're doing, for all your contributions, for speaking
Oh,
out
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
recognizing
absolutely.
parents. And I'm going to have you back on again. All right. And
Yeah.
we're going to go for pizza.
Okay. Yeah, let's go for pizza. Okay. We should talk about a conference. That'd be great.
Yeah, we really should. I would like to do
yeah,
that with you. So
yeah.
let's talk about that. Okay.
And next time I won't end on like a big theme at the
We
very
should
very
talk about a conference. You see how he slipped that right in there? I'm going to leave that right here because I think I've had enough. I think you've probably had enough. And no, I won't be looking at the next video. I'm done. Like I can't. And I choose not to. I'm not subjecting myself to this. Right at the very end, though, we should do a conference. Let me get all your leads from your Facebook group because, you have all those and I have the degree. And that's what he's doing. He's running the circuit. He's going through the circuit of these different estranged parents that are like her, that are content creators, and they're all inviting and embracing him and everything, because also they're going to have a difficult time finding a licensed therapist that will come on and be with them, and also support their narrative. They when they find one, they keep them until they don't. And what I'm saying around until they don't, I think what's going to happen is he is harvesting all of their people, and then he is going to leave them behind. And when that happens, I will do a video about it and just build his own empire. That's what he's thinking he's going to do. Mark my words. Anywho, yeah, why? I'll see you later. I don't even have a sign off in my brain.